Most modern readings of the fall picture a sunny garden and a broken rule. The reality St. Ephraim describes is a terrifying cosmic tragedy. To see the true stakes of the Genesis story, we look through the eyes of a 4th century visionary named St. Ephraim the Syrian. Ephraim argues that understanding what actually happened to humanity requires moving past the concept of a pleasant botanical park. He maps Eden using the strict, unforgiving rules of ancient temple architecture. Through this lens, the fall becomes a fatal structural breach. This diagram models Eden as a massive cosmic mountain, separated into ascending zones of increasing holiness. At the base lies an outer courtyard. Moving up, a strict boundary appears. At the summit sits the Holy of Holies, the sanctuary containing the tree of life. Within this sacred space, Adam operates as a king, though he wears no crown of physical gold. Instead, Ephraim describes him as clothed in an ineffable divine robe of glory. This divine garment acts as a functional shield, covering his physical body and allowing him to safely exist near the intense, almost radioactive presence of God's holiness. His original state is one of absolute protection. However, his ability to occupy this sacred space depends entirely on this divine garment. On the boundary line between the middle slope and the glowing peak stands the tree of knowledge. In Ephraim's geology, this tree serves as a sanctuary veil, a protective curtain designed to shield Adam from the inner peak's overwhelming glory. Centuries later, the Hebrew Bible records the story of King Uzziah of Judah, a monarch who presumptuously marched past the permitted boundaries into the temple sanctuary. For trespassing into unauthorized sacred space, Uzziah was immediately struck with leprosy, a physical disfigurement brought on by exposure to a holiness he had no right to approach. Ephraim links these two kings. Adam reaching for the forbidden fruit was a violent, presumptuous tear through the holy veil of the mountain. The moment he snatches that fruit, he commits an act of architectural vandalism. He rips down the very curtain protecting him from the peak. The consequence is instantaneous. His protective robe of glory is stripped away. Without that armor, he is hit by what Ephraim calls double knowledge, a terrifying twofold revelation that strikes him the millisecond he is exposed. First, his unprotected eyes are blasted by the unfiltered radiant glory of the Holy of Holies, shining directly out from behind the torn veil. Simultaneously, he looks down and sees his own exposed, impure, and suddenly unglorified physical flesh for the first time. The trauma of the fall is this sensory strike. Adam is suddenly staring into the blinding fire of God's holiness, while acutely aware of his own naked impurity. Following this exposure, the voice of God approaches the outer regions of the garden. Without his protective robe, Adam is physically and spiritually incapable of enduring the divine presence. His flight is a desperate reaction to a holiness he can no longer survive. The blueprint shows his chaotic retreat. Adam abandons the center of the mountain sanctuary and flees backward across the boundary line, all the way to the margins among the fig trees. When he and Eve sow fig leaves together, they desperately try to cover their shameful members, attempting to replace a lost garment of light with dead foliage. This act of hiding and wearing leaves represents a tragic self-imposed eviction. Humanity must now cower from the very presence they were designed to inhabit. St. Ephraim's architectural model frames the fall as a tragedy of lost intimacy. The lasting devastation of Eden is the lethal exposure and cold exile resulting from the violation of a sacred boundary. Ephraim's vision of this story concludes by returning to the mechanics of the mountain and the robe. He points to a restoration where Christ enters the narrative to weave a new robe of glory. Through the cross and baptism, this garment of light is returned to humanity, allowing the exiled to once again stand safely within the sanctuary's fire.